Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the channel. At UFC 266, Brian Ortega lost to Alexander Volkanovski by decision. And I know some of you guys are already wondering what's next for Brian Ortega. And I've came up with three names in the featherweight division who Brian Ortega could potentially be matched up with next. Before I get to that, do me a favor, make sure you like the video. It really helps support the channel. And let's talk about the fight at UFC 266 for a second. I know I already did a whole post fight. You guys can check that out if you want to. But Alexander Volkanovski defeated Brian Ortega by decision. And I feel like when you hear the word decision, it's almost deceptive when it comes to this fight because I feel like most people, when you hear it was a decision victory, you almost think it was a competitive, close fight. And I know people were in the moment, they were really high on this fight and they were saying it was a classic. And John Anik even said, I think these two will fight again one day. Maybe I'm the only person seeing this. Maybe I'm crazy, whatever. But this was a one-sided beatdown for Alexander Volkanovski, minus a couple close submission attempts by Brian Ortega. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying Brian Ortega didn't belong in there. He's one of the best featherweights in the world. But Alexander Volkanovski just outclassed him at almost every second of the fight. And if you look at the fight, the third, the fourth round, it could have easily been stopped by the referee. It could have easily been stopped by the doctor in between rounds. And it could have easily been stopped by Brian Ortega's corner. I honestly believe that some of the damage that Volkanovski was landing on him in that third and that fourth round was just so brutal. At one point, he had him stacked. Ortega had his head flat against the mat. And Volkanovski was just landing huge ground and pound strikes. And I was like, ugh. Please, somebody step in and save this man. The damage he wore on his face after the fight was brutal. I've not seen that since Max Holloway versus Calvin Kattar, since Max Holloway versus Brian Ortega back in 2018. And, I don't see Brian Ortega making his way back to a title shot for a long time, especially when you have Volkanovski and Holloway currently kind of at the top of the division. But there is a lot of available guys at featherweight right now within the top 10. Right now, you have Chan Sung Jung does not have a fight. You have Calvin Kattar doesn't have a fight. You have Arnold Allen doesn't have a fight. Josh Emmett doesn't have a fight either. Giga Chikadze does not have a fight. Dan Ige does not have a fight. Edson Barboza does not have a fight. That's the entire top 10 after number 3 in the UFC official rankings. All those guys are available. So I have 3 potential matchups for you, and I think they could all happen. It's just a matter of timing because the true answer to what's next for Brian Ortega is time off. I think he needs to take a few months off. I don't want to see him fight until spring or summer of next year. But some of these other guys might wait around till then as well. You never know. The division could be different. Maybe Ortega takes a year off. I don't know. But right now, looking at the landscape of the division, I think these fights make the most sense when Ortega decides to return. So first off, I'll go with Edson Barboza. Edson Barboza just recently got finished by Giga Chikadze. Edson Barboza is probably going to take a decent amount of time off. And what better fight to make than Brian Ortega versus Edson Barboza? Sign me up for that. I would love that fight. Ortega looks like he's getting better every time out in the striking. Edson Barboza has looked amazing at featherweight. I know he just lost to Giga Chikadze, but he even looked good in that fight in the loss. And Giga looks like he could be a potential, title contender very, very soon. And I think this fight would be a lot of fun. I think it would be a fan-friendly fight. I think it could be a main event of a fight night. And I would love to see this fight. And I think it's a perfect matchmaking by the UFC. I know Edson Barboza would be down for it. And I think it's a 50-50 fight. I think Barboza can take it. I know Barboza is only ranked number 10. So it's not like he's a high-ranked guy. But I have so much respect for Edson Barboza. I consider him a top featherweight regardless if he's all the way out at number 10. And I think Brian Ortega should take that fight. And a lot of people know Edson Barboza. So if he could pick up a big win over Edson Barboza, he's right back in the mix at featherweight. So I like that fight. Then you have number 9, Dan Ige, who's coming off a recent loss to Korean Zombie. I think that fight would make a lot of sense as well. That'd be a fun matchup. I would even favor Brian Ortega in that matchup. And Dan Ige doesn't have a fight lined up himself. So Dan Ige is a perfect matchup. Number 9 in the division. It's a manageable task for Brian Ortega. He just absorbed a lot of damage. He just fought the best featherweight in the world and Alexander Volkanovski. And Dan Ige is a winnable fight, in my opinion. I have respect for Dan Ige. I think he's a great fighter. But I favor Brian Ortega to beat Dan Ige. I think he's probably better everywhere. The striking would be close, but Ortega, his striking is just getting better every time out. So sign me up for Brian Ortega versus Dan Ige. The next matchup I'm going to give you is probably my favorite matchup because I feel like this would be the best fighter out of the three, and that would be number 5, Calvin Kattar. Calvin Kattar's coming off a brutal beatdown against Max Holloway. The UFC loves to match up losers with losers, get a guy back on track. I hope Calvin Kattar takes even more time off because the beating he took in January of this year, and I know he's already took 9 months off. Let's take another 6 months, and in 6 months, give me Brian Ortega versus Calvin Kattar, and that would be such a fun fight. Two young guys who both, even though they're not championship level, I don't believe, I mean, this fight would be super competitive. Calvin Kattar's boxing, Brian Ortega's ever improving striking, his amazing submission skills, jiu-jitsu, looking for the takedowns, spinning back elbows, power shots, leg kicks. This fight, I mean, in this matchup, I think people would really get behind and love this fight. So for me personally, I want to see Brian Ortega versus Calvin Kattar. They both took a lot of damage in their last fights. I want to see one of them get back on the winning track, and I think it makes the most sense. And I think it's a super competitive match. I have no idea who wins that fight, honestly. When you look back at the other two matchups, Brian Ortega versus Dan Ige, I favor Ortega, but not crazily. The Edson Barboza fight, I think it's a 50-50 fight. Ortega could take it or Barboza could take it. I'd probably slightly lean Brian Ortega. Calvin Kattar versus Brian Ortega, I have no idea who wins that fight. That would be super fun. That could be a main event of a fight night again. And that gets one of those guys back on track and headed back towards the title, even though I think it's going to be a while before Brian Ortega can get another title shot because he's already lost to Max. Now he's lost to Volkanovski. Both have been dominant losses. So it's going to be a while. He's going to have to fight a lot of guys. So why not make the first fight back Calvin Kattar? But that's pretty much it. There are the three matchups I came up with. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Don't forget to like the video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.